right, hey everybody. Today is Monday, April 13th, 2026. This is episode number 95 here on my YouTube channel. Appreciate y'all tuning in. For those that don't know, my name is Luther and I'm part of a group of real estate practitioners that does primarily real estate investing and the related services, okay? So funding and financing, operations is a big thing, and creative financing is one of my specialties, all right? So I've been on a series talking about real estate investment operations. I did a bit of a series on the capital aspect of the business, and I kind of want to tie the two in together today. And of course, I talk about the strategy, all kind of around business and real estate investing. The capital, the strategy, and the operations usually is what I talk about, not in any particular order. And in today's session, I want to talk more about compensation or payment or remuneration, if you will, for the service providers, or you might be an operator, or you might be an investor. There's different terms, right? And of course, there's different strategies. And a big challenge that I have faced and a number of my clients, partners, and colleagues have faced is how to get themselves paid, or how we can get ourselves paid as we're going through the process, okay? Because there are a lot of misconceptions and misunderstandings around real estate investing, let alone owning property, and what cash flow and what profits in real estate investments really looks like, okay? A lot of investors get in and they think that they want to flip houses, or they want to eventually do multifamily, and like, it's tough because there's a lot that we see online nowadays with social media. There's a lot that gets put out there in the airwaves when it comes to coaching and advising or consulting around real estate investing. And then there's not so much that gets put out there about what it's really like, the real numbers, okay, the operations, right? And that's part of what I feel called to do on this channel. So I appreciate you tuning in, all right? And again, this will probably be a multi-part series where I talk about compensation or real estate investors or real estate operators getting paid throughout the process, because again, it may be hard for you to see it if you haven't done a deal, or maybe you've done a couple deals, all right? And I don't know what your story is. Maybe you've done several deals and you've managed properties and renovations like I have, and it's just gonna resonate for different people out there. But my big thing that I want to emphasize on this series is how we, as operators or investors, can get compensated throughout the process so that we are not just relying on the back end, okay? So when I say the back end, to put it into context in a simple way, if you're gonna buy a house and you're gonna renovate it and you're gonna resell it, the back end would be after you resell it, you get profits or you get paid at that point, okay? If you are owning, or if you want to own rentals, the back end in that case would be, okay, you get in, you odds are you're gonna do some type of upgrades or renovation, and then you may refinance at some point, right? And then you are going to rent out the house, or if it's a multiplex, you're gonna rent out those units. And then that on the back end, however long that takes, however it looks, however you got to get through that process on the back end, then you can enjoy cash flow from your rentals. Well, unfortunately, I would say a good 80% of the time, it's not how it works, unfortunately. And so I want, especially the operators, because that's, my perspective. I grew up in the business early on. I got into sales and off-market deals, and then I got into property management. And then inevitably, as you are doing property management, you're connecting with contractors. And at some point you get into renovations, and then, my story continued from there. And so I had a little bit different perspective going in than some of you may have. A lot of people, they may not have any experience. All they know is what they've seen online and what someone in a night or weekend seminar told them. Okay, that's usually it. So you may not necessarily know. Well, I'm here hopefully to shed some light on the reality of it, so you won't, have to go through some of the nightmares and go through the challenges and obstacles that we've gone through, right? If you're an investor, right, you're an operator, and again, it really kind of depends on, like I said before, where you're coming in. If you're coming in and you're the money guy or you're the money gal, it's a little bit different. That's different than where I came in from. And I think a lot of investors come in either as an agent or a wholesaler, a contractor, or a property manager. I would venture to say, I don't know the exact percentage, but a large percentage of those that get into real estate investing start off in one of those areas: an agent, wholesaler, lender, contractor, property manager. And some of us have done multiples of those. Then, okay, we get in, we're helping our clients, we're helping our investors. At some point, we may start to look at the capital aspect. Then we look at raising capital. Then we look at partnering with people who got money, right? That, I would say, is the trajectory for a majority of real estate investors, okay? The thing is, right, with that renovation, resale, right, with that getting through rentals to cash flow on the back end, unfortunately, it can take years to actually see profits or cash flow from your investments. Whether you do one, or whether you do 100 in a year, or whether you've done thousands of them over the last 15 to 20 years, it can take years to actually see cash flow or profits depending on your strategy, right? And I don't want to get too much into strategy on this video because I've done a series on that. And I've done a series on seller financing, which is one of our main strategies, okay? But today, and continuing forward, this will be a multi-part series. I know I'm already eating into some of your time. Appreciate you tuning in, bear with me. But getting paid as an operator, right? Again, most of you are agents or property managers. You might be a loan broker or mortgage lender, right? Or you're a contractor, right? We got to figure out the capital aspect. Then from there, okay, are you going to wait until the very back end to get your cash flow or your proceeds, or are you going to find a more efficient way to get paid to work, to get paid to provide your service? Because here's the thing, besides there really not being much profits or cash flow at all for a majority of investors, potentially for years to come, there's a lot of work and time and energy that gets put, that's part of the process, okay? Again, I just did a series on operations, right? So let's get into it a little bit. How might that look, right? Where are the exchange points, or where are the key areas where money is getting exchanged, or where work is being done, or where service is being provided throughout the real estate investing process? Let's think about that, right? Okay, first off, on the transaction itself, on you or your client, right, acquiring the property, just getting to that point alone could be daunting, okay? I remember, I'll give a quick example on this one. I remember in 2011, a good buddy of mine reached out to me. I was waiting tables, okay? And I wanted to do real estate, right? And he approached me and said, hey, I'm interested in doing real estate. You know, I know your family has done it for years. Let's see if we could sit down with your pops and talk about how we could do some real estate together. And I said, okay, cool. I think I was 24, 25 years old at the time as a server, okay, at a bar, right? We got together, long story short. He got an LLC, I got my own LLC. We got together. It took us 6 months to find our very first deal, okay? So just, again, on the exchange points, on where service is being provided and money is being exchanged, right? It could take you 2 weeks, it could take you 6 months or a year, I don't know. But that's work, that's time and energy. So are you gonna pay yourself as an operator or an investor at the time of transaction once you acquire the property? Next one, the renovation, okay? Everybody and their uncle wants to flip houses, right? HGTV done messed it up for us years ago. Okay, cool. Getting through the renovation, okay? What does that look like? How long will that take? At least 2 weeks on just a clean out. Let's assume that the house is turnkey or the units or the multiplex is vacant and maybe not quite move-in ready, but everything is functional. All the utilities are up, all the units or the house is vacant. All you need to do is clean it out and clean it up. Maybe a paint job, right? Maybe some flooring or carpet, right? Let's say that takes 2 weeks. Okay, cool. There's an exchange there. There's service that's being provided there. Okay, that's on the low side, right? On a clean out or a trash out and a clean up and maybe a paint job and some flooring work. That's 2 weeks on the low side. Again, everybody and our uncles want to flip houses, so no, we're gonna go into the hood and we're gonna find a 100-year-old house that's cheap, right? And we're gonna rehab that thing and we wanna do a full rehab. Okay, cool, let's explore that real quick before I get on to the next thing. If we take on a full rehab, which may not even necessarily be a full rehab, but let's say kitchen, bathrooms, paint, flooring, right? Exterior work, gotta clean the yard up a little bit. We're not gonna do windows. We may not upgrade the electrical panel, right? But we're gonna do the main stuff. We upgraded the HVAC. Okay, cool. We did the roof. Okay, cool. All right, that might take 2 months. It could take 6 months. Hell, I know investors that don't even get that freaking far, okay? So let's assume that they do get through it in 3 months, right? And let's say they don't have to fire the first contractor that they hire. Okay, cool. 2-3 months, that's still an exchange. My whole point here is you need to get paid for at least your time and or your energy to get through that process. It took you 2 weeks to 6 months to find a deal. It took you 2 weeks to 3 months to get through the renovation, right? Okay, pay yourself for that. Even if you're the money person, the way I see it now, you got to decide. That's the whole point. Think about it, right? Whatever strategy you're doing, right? Whether you're going turnkey, wholesale, fix and flip, buy and hold, single family, multifamily, commercial, whatever strategy, and however you work, there's multiple people always involved. Behind the scenes, there's always at least one backer, okay? So if you're not that backer, as I said before, most of us came in as the operators. We're on the ground. We're doing the work. Pay us, get paid to do the work. Okay, on to the next one. There's the deal or the acquisition, acquiring the property. Then there's the reno, however that looks. Next up, you got to get the place occupied. Okay, cool. We could do a whole series on just finding tenants or finding buyers or residents, okay? And that could be a number of things, again, based on your strategy. Once you've bought it, once you've renovated, right? And I could go even deeper, but I'm not going to. You could throw in the refinance in there because we know most of y'all are using hard money loans. You got to get that stuff cleared out if you want to keep the investment long term. Anyway, so the acquisition, the renovation, and then getting it occupied. What can getting it occupied look like? It could look like you just putting it on the open market and getting it sold. In that case, it's what most of y'all think y'all want to do, fix and flip. Okay, cool. Think about that track, all right? There's whole, videos, videos and series on that alone. That's one, if you resell the property. Then there's the other one where you rent the property out or you rent the units out, okay? The third thing, again, back to our specialty, is seller financing. we could find a resident or a family to put into that home. Either way, that's the third exchange where money gets exchanged, right? And where you might want to get yourself paid is getting the place sold or occupied, okay? And then from there, right, if you keep the property long-term as a note, i.e. seller financing, or a rental, whether it's short-term, medium-term, or long-term, this is the fourth key exchange, right? Let's go down the list again. There's the acquisition, there's the renovation, okay? Then there's the resale, but again, let's assume that we're gonna grow our portfolio. Then there's, if not the resale, there's placing the tenants or placing the residents, however that looks, right? That was number 3. Number 4 is the ongoing management of not just the rental or rentals, but the ongoing management of the business. So then at that point, that's where a lot of investors assume that things are going to be gravy and that they'll get paid from the cash flow, however that looks. In some cases, yes, it'll work out. In some cases, no, it may not work out, meaning that there is no cash flow, but you still have to manage the business and manage the rental or rentals. Do you hear what I'm saying? So that's the fourth part. And are you going to compensate yourself through that process? You don't necessarily have to do all 3 or all 4. Again, the whole purpose of this message is to get you to think about how you can get into real estate investing and how you can stay investing in real estate without burning yourself out. I love the idea of waiting to get paid, but I guess it really, again, depends on your strategy. Some people just want to get in and get out and be done in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, or whatever. I, on the other hand, I plan to do this stuff till the day I die. So I have to think about this a little bit more. If I'm going to help a number of investors and clients out, in order to not get burnt out, as we're dealing with all of the mental overhead and everything else as part of the operations, capital strategy altogether, in order to stay in business, for a decade or 2 decades or however long, it's a lot of work, okay? And again, I want y'all to think about the process, think about your systems, and think about the capital, the strategy, and the operations, okay? This is part 1, right? Talking about, getting paid or remuneration or compensation for investors or operators, i.e. ideally those who are on the ground, those running the show, the boots on the ground, okay? And on my next video, it may not be the next one or on a future video for sure, I'm gonna talk more about how you can structure that. And a thing that was really eye-opening to me before I go is as I was looking at the capital aspect of the business a number of years ago, right? I started to rub elbows with some of the players that I knew in the multifamily and the commercial space. Why? Because a big part of what they do was raising capital. Okay, so as I was rubbing elbows with these professionals, I started to pick up some of the jargon. There's certain terms that get used. And a big one, okay, again, before I go, is limited partner and general partner, okay? So I want y'all, and this is something that I've done and I'm continuing to do, is to see how we can incorporate some of the good things from multifamily and in the commercial world, and then kind of incorporate that into the residential single-family home investment world and put those together so that we can continue investing and operate the thing like a business, all right? So before I go, again, limited partner, general partner, okay? Just a quick tidbit on that, right? The limited partner are those individuals that put up the capital. So as I mentioned before, that would be your capital person or your backer, right? Those are the limited partners. The general partners are you, right? You have the experience as the agent, the lender, the contractor, the property manager, right? However you are working it on the ground, serving your clients. In that case, you put those together, the limited partner puts up the capital, you, the general partner, running the show. That's huge, all right? So that's it for today. Again, stay tuned. If you want to learn more about capital strategy and operations or just real estate, especially here in the Kansas City market. You can reach out to me directly, or you can check out some of the previous videos and connect with us on social media as well. All right, thanks for tuning in. Have a blessed day. Peace.